Imagine you've just bought something with your credit card. Say Michael Jackson's glove or maybe a hamster. We've all used credit cards, but did you ever wonder how this pressed piece of plastic ended up in your purse? Let's go exploring.
First, let's take a look at the card itself. These numbers are different on every card, but they aren't just a random string. They have a certain amount of structure and carry a common numbering scheme.
The prefix, called the bank identification number, is a sequence at the beginning that determines which bank the card is from. That's followed by the individual account number, and the final digit is the validity check.
All Visa cards start with the number 4. Believe it.
Credit cards were first used in the 1920s by service stations to sell fuel to a growing number of automobile owners. By the 1950s, with the creation of the Interstate Highway System, they became the easiest way for travelers to pay for things when they couldn't access their home banks.
The Interstate Highway System was created by a man named Dwight Eisenhower, who, among other things, was President of the United States for a while. Let's talk briefly about Eisenhower's religion.
The year is 1954. President Eisenhower has recently converted from Jehovah's Witness to Presbyterian. He attends the same church Abe Lincoln once attended and sits in the same pew Lincoln once sat in, listening to the sermon. According to the preacher,
what makes the United States strong is her sense of being what Lincoln described as a nation under God. And I'm very troubled by the fact that our Pledge of Allegiance does not include any reference to the deity.
After the service concluded, Eisenhower spoke personally to the preacher, and the very next day started the wheels turning in Congress to incorporate under God into the Pledge of Allegiance.
But the original pledge was hardly religious. In 1891, a man named Francis Bellamy was hired by the Youth Companion magazine to expand subscription sales.
A campaign was created to sell American flags to public schools as a premium to solicit subscriptions. In 1892, they sold tons of flags and subscriptions, but the market wasn't quite saturated. So, to boost sales even further, Francis Bellamy wrote a pledge that could be recited during a flag raising ceremony and published it in the September 8, 1892 issue of the Youth Companion. The original pledge read as follows.
I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The recital was accompanied with a salute, called the Bellamy Salute, which for obvious reasons was changed during World War II to the now familiar hand-over-heart gesture.
But Francis wasn't the only author in the family. His cousin, Edward Bellamy, was a Christian socialist, and his book, Looking Backwards, was the third most popular book of its time, just behind Ben-Hur and Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Looking Backwards tells the story of Julian West, a young American who falls into a deep hypnosis-induced sleep and wakes up more than a century later. He finds himself in the year 2000, and while he was sleeping, the USA has been transformed into a socialist utopia. And in chapters 9, 10, 11, 13, 25, and 26, an altogether new idea is introduced. Instead of cash wages, citizens receive credit based equitably on their production in society. This credit can be exchanged for goods or services using what he calls, you guessed it, credit cards.
So, there it is. Credit cards are invented by Edward Bellamy in 1887, put into use in the 1920s, made popular in the 1950s thanks to the Interstate Highway System, which was invented by Dwight Eisenhower, who put the words "under God" into the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954, which was written in 1892 by Francis Bellamy, cousin of the inventor of the credit card. All these oceans and rivers are connected, you know.